Does any member of the committee know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? Okay, thank you. If at any point something does come up, please state your name for the record and then your reason of the conflict of interest and bring the matter to me, the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter as well. Okay. At this time, all of you should have had the opportunity to see the agenda and the minutes that were on the website, that the link that was sent to you guys. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes and the agenda? Do we need to get this? Okay, do I have a motion from the floor to approve the previous meeting's minutes?
Make a motion that we approve that.
Okay, Martin Rickman. And do I have a second?
Second.
To approve? Natalie O'Brien. Thank you. And then can I entertain also a motion to approve the agenda as it is right now for this meeting?
I motion that we approve.
Okay, Craig? And then a second, please.
Second.
Thanks, Natalie. And what we'll do is, as Cindy is taking roll, if you would just announce that you're present, and your vote will be your vote to individual vote to approve these will be during that roll call. So just state that you're present and that you accept both the agenda and the minutes, if you would. Okay. I'll go ahead and give it to Cindy Taylor for the roll call.
Thank you. Devin Tanner.
Present, and I accept both.
Marvin Smith. Craig Uzel.
Present, and I approve both.
Dave Machado.
Present and approve both.
Kevin Harrison.
Present and approve both.
Carol Ann Hutchins. Mark Ezel. Stephen Lowry.
Present, and I approve both.
Paul DeLuey.
Present and approve both.
Michael Newsom.
Present, I approve both.
Haigon Kapikian.
Present, and I approve both.
Dr. Shanae Flood.
She's absent today, and I'm Christy Daughtry in place for her.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Captain Gary Brown. Martin Rickman.
Present, I approve both.
Natalie O'Brien.
Present, and I approve both.
And Doug Eller. You have 10, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much, Cindy. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and have Carl give his DPI update.
Cindy, do you have the PowerPoint?
I do. I'm sharing it now.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you would take a look at the screen when it gets there, and you'll see what the DPI update will consist of. We'll start off with a special recognition, and we'll have some, I'll give you an update on the DEAC policy recommendations, the legislative comments, teacher certifications, and some upcoming events. To get started here, first and foremost, the DEAC, the Driver Aid Advisory Committee, would not be successful without the commitment and dedication of its members. And we'd like to pause and recognize the members who are offboarding this year. Unfortunately, this year is one of those years where a lot of people are scheduled to offboard. And so you'll flip through that. You go down to the fourth slide, I think it is, Cindy. There we go. There were some members that were offboarded early this year due to personal circumstances, retirements, graduation, but anyway, but we recognize Mr. Mark Shepard of Haywood County, Mark Ezel, who's the Director of Governor's Highway Safety, Mr. Wyatt Smith, who was the student representative, and Ms. Sarah Martin, who offboarded earlier this year. So thanks for their services. And on to the next slide, Cindy. Mr. Stephen Lowry with the Department of Transportation, Dr. Shanae Flood, Department of Non-Public Education. Mr. Rickman in the house here. How long have you been in with Cumberland County Schools? Should I not ask you that?
46 years.
46 years. Thank you for your service down there. And thank you for service with the Driver Ed Advisory
I've
Committee.
enjoyed it, really have.
And then Natalie O'Brien, who it feels like I've known since she was just a child. But UNC Highway Research Center has been a critical member of this, not to say that the others have not been, but critical member of this advisory committee. Mr. Doug Eller, who is, I don't think he is on the line today either, but has been a seasoned teacher out there with almost as many years as Martin has. Paul DeLuey, who is with the North Carolina Division of Motor Vehicles with School Bus and Traffic Safety, and then Mr. Devin Tanner, who represents the NCDTSEA, and I'll come back to him in just a second. But special recognitions, on to the next slide there, Cindy. Unfortunately, Mr. Marvin Smith just emailed me and told me that he would not be able to be here today. But anyway, we had a special recognition for him. Is his gavel. So once I see him, I feel like I've known Marvin forever. Marvin has been with the DEAC since 2018. He stepped up last year at the retirement of Kathy Short to step in as vice chair. He filled that role. Marvin owns Marvin Smith Driving School over in Stanley, Albemarle area. And then and he also serves Montgomery County Schools. And so Marvin has been in traffic safety education for quite some time. Also, his wife, Vicki, whom I've known very well, was a retired Highway Patrol secretary. So we've got traffic safety running through that house all over the place there. So Marvin is not able to be on with us today, but anyway, we do thank him for his services. And last but not least, our chair, who I feel like has been here as long as I have. Actually, Devin Tanner has been serving in this capacity since he came on from 2018, been the chair since that day. He's the past president 2 times of the North Carolina Driver and Traffic Safety Education Association. He is also the coordinator of Wake County Schools Driver Education Program. And so Devin actually began attending these meetings before he became a member. So Devin, with special thanks to you, here's your
Thank you so much.
thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Appreciate your service. Now get back to work here.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm just kidding. I'm going to continue talking.
If I can just make a quick remark.
Really?
Yeah.
Since you're the chair, I guess I can do that.
Okay.
No, I just I want to I just want to thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity to be doing this and to serve. My main job is serving students around the state, but being able to be involved with all of you and be able to bounce questions and see research and talk about various things that you guys are in your professions has helped me a lot with what I do at Wake County Schools. And it's been a pleasure to be able to be on this board and to be the chair as well. So thank you guys for all of your work and for everything you do for the students in our state.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner. It's interesting that, and I have to admit this publicly, that right after the last meeting, there were 2 ladies standing here, Natalie O'Brien and Carol Ann Hudgens, and we were talking about the fact that the advisory committee has term limits. And after a few moments of tutelage from the 2 of those ladies, they made me realize that I actually have the power to recommend policy change. So right now, and unfortunately I didn't know that before now, but anyway, so we have submitted policy change to the State Board of Education, which is in its final stage of approval. that policy change, the policy revision actually will address some administrative and editorial changes to the advisory committee policy, which will give us some better flexibility, and it clarified some of the policy that was written in policy. So the second thing is that we are able to replace one of the members or the seats that was held by the community colleges and the universities. As you know, the university program for driver education went away in 2015 with the last one at East Carolina University. We felt like that our partnership with the Child Fatality Task Force would be more appropriate. We've talked to them, and they have graciously accepted coming onto there. So, and the last thing, the most important one, is to remove the term limits. Remove the term limits of critical members of key agencies. Therefore, if the motion passes, or the vote passes on June the 1st, the members of the, next slide, Cindy, all of the members from those key agencies on the right-hand side of the page there will be chosen by their agencies, and they will be able to remain on the committee. And hopefully, if I can get some nods here, I know I'm looking at Natalie. I know Natalie's going to say yes, I'll continue to serve. But I know that some of you would be allowed to remain on, which is great news for us. I know, and it's just picking on Natalie here, because I know that this is your specific role with University of North Carolina Highway Research Center.
Yeah, I spend probably 90% of my time researching young driver issues, so.
Right.
My primary focus.
Well, I've received no questions or feedback from the State Board of Education, and I don't see any reason why that may not be passed. But anyway, so and I know the comments I've received so far is that it was a great idea to do that. So thank you for the idea. Anyway, what they say, it takes a village to raise a section chief. Yeah. So anyway, moving on, Cindy, the legislative update. There's not really anything going on except we are still trying to obtain funding for our standardized curriculum, which is required by statute. Next slide, Cindy.
It won't let me go. There it goes.
Cindy's struggling. She's had the technology bug the last couple of days. So anyway, as I stated, required by statute is a curriculum, standard curriculum provided by DPI, which we have created. Now we just need to try to figure out how to get it out there. So we're looking at alternative methods if that doesn't work out. And but we're excited about it. It's been piloted in five districts. Miss Easterwood, I have to pick on her. You can just nod since you don't have a microphone. Miss Easterwood said I was correct. She doesn't say I'm right a lot. Next slide would go to the quarterly updates. The third quarter numbers are in. All of our districts have responded. As you see on top there, the orange line shows the number of students that have been served. And as you can see in the third quarter, the classroom, we're almost back to the pace before COVID. So, and then the BTW part is slightly behind. The only thing that we don't know is how many students are in this that were upperclassmen that would not show on this. So in actuality, to serve all of the students, we would need to actually be beyond the pace. But anyway, so we're at least back to normal somewhat of handling the backlog of students. The strategy to combat backlogs has been obviously to get teachers back to work, which was a major issue. I see the coordinators of certain districts shaking their heads, and that it was COVID really impacted our operations significantly. Unfortunately, if we're thinking about, and it's something as a group here, something that we need to think about is a risk management plan. Every time that every time there's some external force or impacts our program where it causes us to fall off pace or lose the pace of serving students. So there's something that maybe we can look at as a strategy going down the road on how we can eliminate that possibility. And Cindy, if you will skip 2 slides for me. One of the ways of obviously of combating backlogs and actually serving students is teacher certification. We have not stopped teaching or training teachers through our STEP program. This past spring, we are actually, I think it is next week that they'll be finished. Next week, we expect 49 new teachers to finish the program that we have through the STEP program. The year to date, 145. Just like with state board policy, we have 9 mentors in this class, 52 mentors totally for this particular year, but we're still a little short of, based on the numbers that we've asked for from the districts, what would it be, what would it take to, what's the number of teachers that you would need to be full staff? Based on what we have, is we still know that we're 131 teachers short of that amount, but to get us back to where they feel like that they're full staff. I will say that in 2015, we had 1,604 teachers. In 2017, we had 1,100. And since then, we've lost a significant number of teachers during COVID who have not returned yet, but we've actually replaced them. So now we're back to where we were 2 years ago. So kind of, you can look at that any way you'd like to. Moving forward, ESSER 3 funds were distributed at 53 of our 115 districts accepted funds, $265,000. 5 districts did not respond or forfeited their funds, and we know that 57 districts waived those. The criteria was, I assume that those 57 districts decided that they would not be able to use the funds as they would, as they were dictated in policy. And I believe the next thing that we have here on this group would be the strategic plan. Is Mr. Sessoms on? Is he there?
He's here.
Connie Sessoms is the chair of the strategic plan work group. Connie, would you like to give us an update on the strategic plan committee work group?
Yes, we have settled on the members of the committee. We reached outside of the bounds of the Driver Education Advisory Committee to tap into some subject matter experts or SMEs. So we are ready to go. We have agreed upon our first and initial meeting date, which is next Monday. It will be online, and we will get to work. Again, I've said this before, but I will expect that the process will take us about 6 months. We will meet once a month on a recurring meeting day. We'll settle that on Monday when we meet. And Mr. Logan, we will address in the strategic plan issues like what we've just spent the last 2 years going through. We will, one of the recommendations is for DPI or Driver Education to develop a emergency preparedness plan And it doesn't have to be COVID. It could be a hurricane. It could be a tornado. It could be a power outage. Any of those, which would cause us to lose contact with our students. We need to be thinking in that regard. So yes, we fully intend to incorporate that into the strategic plan. Another item that we will take up, and all of us are faced with this, is ADAS, or automated driver assistance systems. Now, what does that mean? When your car starts doing stuff by itself without your help, we need to know how to deal with that. And we need to be able to teach our students what's going on with that. So things like that, the strategic plan will get incorporated, and we will the things that are said and done will be eliminated, and we are looking to the future. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. I look forward to meeting with you next Monday, right? I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
23rd.
Now, very excited about this. In 1997, I had the opportunity to work with DPI in the implementation of the graduated license program. Right here, and this table, did Arthur plug in online? He did not. Don't know. Okay. UNC Highway Research Center obviously has been very instrumental in this particular program, and that we have Dr. Cheryl Leonard, who is standing in for Mark Ezel. It is for Governor's Highway Safety. Cheryl, would you give us a little bit of an update on the celebration that's coming up at the end of June? She's on the way, isn't she?
Since she's on the way. She's in with that.
Maybe we can pause on that one and wait on her to get here. And she said she was delayed in traffic. The next slide, Cindy. There she is. Just in time. Come on up to the table. I'm sorry. Go back to that previous slide. We're going to have you walk in and start talking. Dr. Cheryl Leonard, you finally, hopefully you didn't have traffic problems.
Welcome to Raleigh, right?
Right.
Okay, I'll be Steven for now. So, yes.
You was right on time. You want to make an entrance, right?
Yeah, like I always do. Hello.
You want to tell us about the celebrations coming up regarding the graduated license program?
Sure. There is a number of partnerships across North Carolina that are putting on a 25th celebration for the North Carolina driver's license program. As many of you, if you have children, or if you don't, and you're just a driver on the road and you see young adults learning how to drive, this is part of the makeup of how all that began 25 years ago. And we are Governor's Highway Safety, along with the North Carolina Child Task Force, has put together a highlight, if you will, for the graduated driver's license program to the legislature's group, so that they will be aware of all the what's the word I want to use? All of the pieces to the graduated driver's licensing program. Because of COVID, as you all know, there were a lot of things that changed and people had to be flexible, etc. So a piece of this was there's a 12-month period for students to learn to drive, and that was shortened because of COVID. So at least that was one of the reasons why. So what we're trying to do is make sure that the mainstay of the graduated driver's license legislation that was inputted based on data through the Highway Safety Research and many others that have kept statistics about how progressive and how good the driver's license program has been in North Carolina. We were the second in the nation to come up with this program. And so we want to make sure that it stays intact. And so this was a brainstorm of the Child Task Force to have a celebration of 25 years. And what we have been doing, which has been quite interesting, is getting those that were here 25 years ago. Unfortunately, some that were huge in making all this happen, unfortunately, are no longer here. And so we are finding different individuals that were part of that committee way back when, and we're hoping, and many of those are going to be present and will be speaking at the presentation. It'll be at 1 o'clock on the outside of the Department of Insurance. And we will have probably a panel, I guess, of 5 speakers. And hopefully we'll have a student that is definitely involved in the graduated drivers program. And we'll present all that. And we're also working on a video that we can use and that we will share with this committee, as well as many others across the state, to talk about the driver's license program. And so we have, of course, the Department of Motor Vehicles has been instrumental in helping us get that put together as well. So the program itself, the celebration shouldn't last more than 30 minutes at the most from start to finish, and that's mingling as well. We hope to have media there as well as many others that will help us spread that word about the graduated drivers program. So, any questions? Any comments? Were any of you here 25 years ago in state government that dealt with traffic safety? Because right now, after walking the mile that I walked, I feel like I was here 100 years ago. And y'all look so much younger than I. So, anybody here 25 years ago?
Just repeating, as you were probably getting off the elevator, when I was happened to be with Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools as the coordinator then, and was able to somewhat barnstorm around the state in discussing with the districts on how this could be implemented, and how it would impact the local school districts. Mm-hmm. So I feel it's like at the time you really don't know how big that's going to be. Mm-hmm. But that was my, I think it was early 98, wasn't it?
Yes, 97, 98.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And so it was one of the first things I did. And it's like I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how special or how important this was going to be to students. And then to find out that we are the first, second. With the second in the nation, second in the nation in this. And I know that everywhere we go with the national traffic safety education programs, that we're noted there as being a leader in graduated license. So thank you all for the leadership that you provided there and the continuation of graduated license. Obviously, we know that there has been a steady decline in fatalities continuously, except for last year, right? So I want you to hang on just a second, because we're going to come back to an open discussion regarding this a little bit later, if the chair allows me to do this. The next thing that we want to announce, Cindy, is the 2 slides more, is the National ADSEA Conference. The American Driver Traffic Safety Education Association will be having this annual conference in Vancouver, Washington. I happen to be the chair of the Administration, Supervision, and Management Division, where we will be having 3 concurrent sessions regarding programs or issues that are national issues. Instructor recruitment is one of the huge ones, and it's not just for driver education, but it is for all teaching. And I don't know, Ms. Machado, how you are in charter schools, but I know that it is difficult to recruit teachers and retain them these days.
Sure is.
Mr. Machado is director of charter schools. Trying to give you a pay raise, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Then mentorships, that we talked about before, blended programs in a new world, social media and messaging, parental involvement, which is a major piece that I believe is missing from driver education, and how to approach legislators. So that should be an interesting session at our national conference there. And then 8 days in August, I've kind of copied that from NASCAR. We will be, DPI will be bouncing around the state. We're going to attend all 8 regions. And we really look forward to getting out of the districts and getting a chance to talk to our district leaders on traffic safety education. About 5 years ago, we bouncing around the state. I got an earful. We had almost 40 changes that went to the State Board of Education and passed every one of them on the first try. How about that, Mr. Machado?
That's pretty impressive.
That's pretty impressive.
Present some charter school.
So we really look forward to bouncing around the state. It's a great opportunity to go out and see where the work is being done, and I really look forward to that trip around the state. And Mr. Chair,
Yes,
if we're a little ahead of schedule, which
we are. And I actually had a question about a slide that we passed over, and I'm wondering if Dr. Leonard might have some insight, because I've spoken with Mark Gazelle about it. We were hoping Tracy would be here to maybe talk a little bit about the North Carolina Traffic Safety Conference and Expo, which is here in Raleigh. And that is over at, I'm sorry?
is it Tracy?
Yes, hi.
Oh, hey, Tracy, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. So I didn't want to pass this over, because this is something that Vision Zero and Governor Highway Traffic Safety have been doing for a few years now here in state. And it's not necessarily a conference that has been advertised very widely to driver educators. And so I guess I'd love for you to introduce this to us, what it is and who mainly attends this. And then I want to ask, how can we as the driver education community make this more friendly for, if it's not already, for educators to attend this conference? And is there anything we can do to help promote, bringing in more presenters that educators would benefit from?
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. So I think the basis of the conference, which, Cheryl Leonard is also a large part of planning this, so she can attest to this too. But the basis of this conference was to bring together all the different partners involved in traffic safety. So we do have a large number of law enforcement who attend the conference, but we've also made a goal to include multidisciplinary sessions. So every single breakout session that we have, there will be some type of wider topic that is relevant to traffic safety, but it's relevant to all kinds of different partners. So for instance, we have a teen driver panel, and Natalie O'Brien will be speaking in that panel. We have a panel on speeding. We have a panel on communications. So I would say that even if you're not coming for specific law enforcement training, there will be a traffic safety topic relevant to you during each breakout session. Now, that being said, I do think that it would be great to get more involvement with driver's ed. So I'm open to anyone's suggestions on how to make that happen. But I would say that anyone who's wanting to learn more about traffic safety research, statewide, national, and also just what's going on in North Carolina, this would still be a relevant conference.
Great. Thank you so much, Tracy. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No,
Dr.
she
Lando?
said that very nicely.
Okay. All right.
Succinct. Yes.
And
It's
what-
exciting. Oh, go ahead,
Oh,
Tracy.
sorry. One more thing I don't want to fail to mention. There will also be a limited number of scholarships. So if you know driver's ed teachers who would be able to travel to the conference, there's a limited number of registration scholarships that will be available. And I'll find that link and put it in the chat. Sorry,
Great, thanks.
that's it. Thank you.
No, no problem.
Tracy, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe there's a panel with Mr. Logan who's going to be on that panel.
Oh yes, I sorry, Carl. Carl is also speaking on the same panel that Natalie is. Sorry, Carl.
I thought I got the strike through.
I just have too many speakers rolling around my head.
I'm just glad to be in the same diocese as Nellie O'Brien. I feel.
It's gonna be a good
Tracy,
panel.
is this conference, is the plan to keep this in Raleigh for a while, or are you planning to move it around like you have in the past?
That is still to be determined. We're hosting this conference every other year from now on, and the committee right now is reviewing potential locations. So it may move around the state a bit, but that's not determined yet for 2024.
And in between those years, we'll have workshops where we can help identify what those are for you. And certainly many of the folks that serve on this committee and their groups will be able to attend, and that we'll find very useful in their educational piece.
Thank you. Thank you. It's always really, I mean, the practical part of this is the educators need to have, professional learning hours to keep up on their certifications. But, a lot of the bigger conferences that they're able to attend are either, really expensive to travel to or whatnot. And I, as I've gone through the agenda and the website for this conference, it seems like it's tailored to close to what Lifesavers does with their national conference, and that is an extremely great experience for any teachers that are able to get there. So I'm just grateful that we've got this conference here in the state that, if we can get more driver educators to it, they'll get a different variety of speakers and presenters than what they're usually used to seeing in Clemens at the NCDTSEA conference and things like that. So it'll give them more of a wide swath of experts.
In the past, North Carolina's been fortunate to host the Lifesavers Conference in North Carolina. I want to say 2016, 17, they did. And then prior to that in, I think it's like 2002, maybe, that we had an opportunity to do that. And so many times we're able to glean some of the speakers from that and bring them to our conference as well. I will say that Tracy and her committee have been huge undertakers of making sure that we have keynote speakers, plenary speakers, and presenters across the board that are experts in their field. And we are excited about what we have lined up for the state. We also know that registration is very easy. You go on our website and you can register, and we would encourage folks in this venue to register, because I think you'll glean a lot of information, not just solely, you'll see a lot of law enforcement in it, and this is the way it originated, was for a law enforcement conference, but we've expanded that to a number of other individuals and partnerships. And so we are always looking, as Tracy said, for speakers, and we use those throughout the year as well. So it's not just a one-time thing, certainly for this traffic safety conference. Last time we held it, which was in 2019, which was in Raleigh, we had well over 900 people to attend. So that is probably one of the largest conferences, and in line with others that have that many across the country. We feel real good about what we can offer and what we can bring to the table. We, like we were talking about earlier, we love the venue here in Raleigh, and it's convenient for a number of folks. But we also know that there's many across the state that would like it closer to their area. And so we are looking at a number of different locations that will be able to help us with all of the moving pieces in a conference in different areas. And we hope to know something about where we're going to have it year after next. Of course, pending any pandemic or other issue, natural disaster. So, knock on wood, hopefully that won't happen.
Thank you, Dr. Leonard, and thank you, Tracy. Really appreciate your presentation.
Well, I'll just follow up with that. I went to Chicago this March for the National Lifesavers Conference, and getting off the train, I think it was 8 degrees, and I had to walk 7 blocks. So please, if you can, we would love to bring the National Lifesavers back to at least the southern states where it's going to be warm that time of year. You mentioned 900 attendees at the NC Traffic Safety Conference next month. North Carolina happened to be the one state that had the most attendees at the National Lifesavers again this year. And normally we have a very large contingent of people who travel to that. So we appreciate you. Well, obviously North Carolina has a lot of people working in the traffic safety industry. And thank you for what you do and your leadership in that.
Thank you.
Look forward to that continuing.
Carl, you were about to ask me if you could present on
I was
something
I
before I cut you off.
we were just going to move on to the subcommittees or something.
Oh, okay. I don't believe, do we have subcommittee reports?
Actually, kind of piggybacks on the back of what we're doing now. As far as the program administration, our section here at DPI are feverishly working with our 3 employees here, with Cindy and Tanya back there, our project manager, with continuing to move forward with implementing the national standards, as well as researching and developing processes that will help us to move a lot of these initiatives forward. I tell people all the time, since our educators are the worst at having great ideas and not being able to move them forward. So I'm looking forward to being able to move some things forward here. And I'm looking forward to the conversation that we're about to have in just a few minutes regarding some administrative ideas. And in the absence of Marvin, can I move on?
Yes, please.
I think we have Mike Newsom and Paul DeLoy on the line. Even though DMV is way over in Rocky Mount, I feel like that they're right in the room next door, because I can pick up the phone and call them, and that I really appreciate the collaboration that we've been working with. Mike and Paul, just kind of openly, Mike, I know that we have been working tremendously in trying to decrease duplicate processes. I like to use that phrase because there are a lot of duplicate processes between the public school program and DMV. Mike, the driver license area, and I have been trying to work on a way to have or collaborate on a standard final test. Mike, you want to elaborate on where we are with some of that?
Yeah, good morning, Carl. Good morning, everyone. A couple of, I would say, hot topics that both Paul and I have joint ventures on. One being, I know there's a lot of questions about for students being able to get a vision check in accordance with the restricted instruction permit at the driver license offices. And I know this has been done over a number of years. And what we can deduce from that is, recently the lines may have become a little blurred as to the driver license office being the first option to obtain a vision check for a student. And so Paul and I are working together to try to refocus that. His DEPS representatives are available to conduct those primarily. And then in cases where students just may have missed a day of eye checks or just can't or not available during that particular day, Paul's team will forecast or project them to a certain DLO for us to kind of support that. And so in the course of our peak season at the driver license office, the busiest season of the year, we want to kind of distinguish those student requirements as opposed to our normal customer flow who are projected by appointments and then sometimes walk in. So just trying to deconflict that with the public and get an understanding of the primary course for a student to get eye checks is with the DEPS in accordance with their program, and then as a fallback, the driver license office. And another thing, I know there's been some inquiries in regards to the commercial driving schools obtaining the ability to conduct road testing as a part of their offered services. So again, Paul and I are working on a joint venture to try to incorporate that requirement into a current curriculum that Paul's team conducts now with the commercial driving school. So those are the two called, I guess, most forward actions that we're currently working on. And as you mentioned before, we're always trying to combine our efforts and reduce the redundancy, whether it be for driver's education testing as opposed to the level 1 graduated licensing testing. So that's a work in progress. But I do look forward to continue to work with you, Paul, and some of the other stakeholders to eliminate those duplicated processes.
Paul, any comments?
I'm Paul Deloy, School Bus and Traffic Safety Manager. Good morning, everyone. Yes, it's still morning by 10 minutes. Just wanted to reiterate, if you have any driver education instructors that are advising that they go to the driver's license office, please stop that. Have them make sure that they are contacting and reaching out to their driver education program specialists in their area to coordinate and get those eye checks done in a more efficient manner. Everybody calls them eye checks, but we all know that they're actually a little bit more. They are a medical check. We're verifying that there's not a challenge that student may face behind the wheel that would be associated with their physical ability. It's nothing to keep them from progressing. It's just to give them all opportunities to progress positively through the driver education program. And matter of fact, last year, or actually this current school year, so far, we've conducted 81,364 eye checks or medical checks. So we've done quite a few. And I know last school year, we did over 101,000. So we keep busy doing them in addition to everything else that we do, but we need your support to keep it the way that it should be. Thank you, everyone, to their help in helping to make the young drivers safe drivers on our roads.
Yes.
Let me ask you a question.
Craig Gazelle.
I'm Craig Gazelle. And we got a letter saying that they can go to the DMV, which we use our DMV person. Okay, so I guess my question is, if somebody misses, can they go to the DMV and get their visions checked? Because I got a letter from DMV saying that now you can go to the DMV to get your vision checked. And then somebody told me, well, now you can't. But we never received any letter, which, we use our DMV person. But there are some situations where it doesn't work out. They can be there when they check the items. So can they go to the DMV and do the
What we need them to do, if they cannot make the time and date of their classroom eye check, then we need them to coordinate through the DEPS, my folks, and we'll set up an appointment. We will set up an appointment with the driver's license office if we can't find another avenue to get them certified through us.
All right, and that's fine, but y'all need to send a letter out so everybody will be on the same page, because we got one saying that they could probably about a month and a half ago. And then, and then somebody told me that we can't, but we never received any information that they can't. So it's a little bit of, I guess, confusion, but that's fine. But I didn't know. And if I don't know, I'm sure a lot of other people don't know either. So thank you.
For Paul, Mike, can we?
Yeah, I was going to say that letter is in process of, it's been revised. So it's in a process of distribution right now. But we are familiar with the letter that you're making reference to, and the commissioner has since revised that letter. So it should be reaching you very soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mike and Paul. Again, I enjoy working with the division on this common goal of the licensing of our young teen drivers, which now segues into we're almost back on schedule, aren't we?
Yeah, I have no other old business to bring up or attend to. Is there, Carl, do you have any other old business that needs to be brought before the
I do
committee?
not.
Okay.
Not at this moment.
Okay, so at this time then, we'll go into new business here. And again, I want to go ahead and recognize Mr. Carl Logan and give him the floor to speak about meeting the needs of today's learner.
I'm really excited about having this conversation because we've got the experts here at the table to kind of begin I guess the continuation of the reformation of the driver ed program. I want to read you something here. In 1928, going back a little bit, aren't I? The concept of driver education was a doctoral thesis by Albert W. Whitney, and the basis of it was due to so many students were learning to drive cars. His argument was that the school had the responsibility to include driver education in the curriculum. According to the records, DPI had its first curriculum approved in 1958. Since then, we have only recorded 3 other curriculum updates in that time period. We have now the fifth curriculum that again, as I mentioned before, we are looking for ways to fund getting it out to the districts. The concept of driver education was in 2 phases. It was a classroom phase and the behind the wheel phase, which is largely still in practice today. The question is that today's learner, how are we serving today's learner as best we possibly can? We know that education has progressed in so many different directions, so many ways. Standards have changed, principles, methodology. And at this table, like I said, we have the experts and representatives of stakeholders of our teen traffic safety education program. And what I'd like to do is kind of just open it up. What do we do? We know as far as education is concerned, the methodology and the principles that we are implementing using the state board guidelines, but are we best serving the students to continue the program as it began 80 years ago? I know it's a very large question. And what we want to do is we want to let data drive us, pardon the pun, data drive us in the direction that we're heading. We somehow or another, we asked this question many years ago at the national conference, and it was asked, where did the 30-hour requirement come from? And Dr. Alan Robinson at the time was doing the presentation, and he said, not even he knew. He was the most senior person in the room at that time. He said, he didn't even know. He said, but it was born somewhat during the Truman administration. And the idea was, and this is where everybody thinks that it was born, was that it was to be taught in the schools, in the curriculum, and it probably would be taught during a semester, which was about 30 hours when you consider 30 days or so during that time. So somehow or another, we've continued, and I use this analogy. If you're in a pasture, being a country boy, if you're in a pasture and sheep go jumping through the gate and there's nothing there, the first one jumps and the ones behind it will jump over the same imaginary gate there. And I feel like that's where we are today, that we're continuing doing something simply because this is the way we've always done it.
So Carl, can I speak?
Go ahead, yes.
So Chad Alvarone, Alamance, Burlington Schools. So when I was coming on board recently, I remember like last year, the year before, and I've been doing this now 19 years. I think at one point people were talking about, like in my mind, something crazy, 45 hours. I think 30 hours is pretty extensive. Now we cover obviously all of our bases and so forth, but I feel like some chapters, at least, and some things that we cover kind of are repetitive and so forth. Now we do have our guest speakers, from Operation Lifesaver. We have our guest speakers from the SROs, the state troopers come in. Ollie Jeffers of MAD comes in. We have a motorcyclist dude called Biker Dave that comes in. So like that obviously absorbs a lot of the hours. But I also think that, we have kids that have been in school, from 8 o'clock or so until, and then after school they're staying for an extra 2 hours. I just kind of question how, I mean, if it was up to me, I think a lot of people agree. I just don't think a lot of people speak openly about it. I would love to extend the 2 hours in the car and maybe go from 6 to 8. And yet again, I know that would kind of be backlog too, and I'll explain why I say that, and kind of shorten the class a little. Now, you talk about changing driver's ed. I'm fortunate here in Alamance that I've got some workhorses that are willing to work, 6, 7 days a week if needed. But some of them are a little older. Not that I'm trying to be ageist and whatnot. And I do have a lot of young people that are interested in doing driver's ed, and the STEP program is great. We've hired 2 people who did the STEP program, but it just takes up a lot of time, 17 and a half weeks, for a lot of these teachers, especially young teachers who are energized, excited, but extremely overwhelmed. And, we're talking about driver's ed here, and I also kind of see the human resource aspect of it as well. We can't get people to come in and teach anymore. I mean, just people don't want to be teachers. I sent an email out to 2 schools about being a driver's ed teacher, salary goes into retirement, yada, yada, yada. I got 1 person respond back to me only because of the time commitments of doing it. I would love to see something as a mentor, and I did the 096, STEP program myself as a mentor. I would love to see something like, instead of a STEP program, or maybe supplemental with a STEP program, focus more on the other 54 hours. I mean, both of my people who've come with me enjoyed the STEP program, but said they learned a lot more, being in the car with me for 24 hours, observing, what I'm doing for 30 hours. Just like in education right now, we have people who are not teachers who are coming from law enforcement and other stuff. And, we're giving them lateral entry. I mean, these are people with no licenses, but we're giving them lateral entry. I would love to see some form of lateral entry to be a driver's ed teacher. Like I said, I mentor them. Let's say they work with me. Maybe we teach a class together, or even maybe, become lateral entry while taking the STEP program rather than finishing the STEP program. That's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Chad. And I appreciate your comments. And those are the type of feedback that we need. While the driver license office is here online, is the challenge that we have now is that the program went out of the curriculum in 1992. Therefore, the districts were required to follow, or DPI was in a position to where we are overseeing the program, and we have and we're using the state board guidelines. But what does that look like once it gets to the 115 school districts? So now we have the issue of standardization. And then what happens to those students when they leave your district, go into the driver license office? Because the driver license office has one set of standards. Are we adhering to the standards, and I guess, Mike, Paul, what are you all seeing at the Division Motor Vehicles level? These are some ideas or things that we don't have time to discuss here at the table today, but there are things that point to our direction as we move down the road. And what does the standardization look like? Because actually we have one highway system, and this is one place where I believe that everybody should be dancing to the same sheet of music. We all should be following the same rules and regulations, and we shouldn't be leaving it up to the districts to determine what it is that they're teaching. Regarding the length of time of the certification process, I'm going to have to pick on Martin. Martin, do you have your certificate? Is it?
It's 096.
096.
Where? East Carolina.
East Carolina. How long did it take you to get that certification?
3 years.
3 years. The the goal here is how do we make the best use of our time? And that we do feel like that our teachers actually spend too much time, and this is what we've discovered. We feel like that we spend too much time on things that the students already know coming to the table. However, how do we make sure that they do know this in order to move forward once they get out on the road? So we feel like that there are things that could be covered in an asynchronous environment as opposed to a synchronous environment. So when you talk about 45 hours, we're not looking to increase the number of hours that a teacher is spending in a classroom. We're looking for the amount of content that a student has access to before they get to the teacher and before they get to the license process. So
I would just say, I think that the biggest thing that I come up from doing this for 19 years is that, as an example, I just taught in driver's ed. I don't want to share too much, but I just taught the valedictorian, in driver's ed. Let's just say that she thought the car was a lawnmower and wanted to jump on the grass quite a bit. And she got 100 in the class, super smart. The problem that I have with the class is that we do teach them obviously a lot of stuff, but a lot of the kids can memorize the information. But the biggest process, as we all know, is the application, right? I mean, I can tell you how to get 6-pack abs. It doesn't mean I'm going to cut back on my calories, work out, and diet. So that's my biggest concern, is that when we're in the class, a kid can tell me, yeah, when there's a green light or a yellow flashing light, we have to yield to oncoming cars. Or, this morning, we had a fire truck behind us. And of course, the students always know, we get to the right, hit the hazards and whatnot. But while she's driving, she panics and doesn't do it. I said, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? I don't know. So I would love to see more of the in-car portion, and obviously a little less of the classroom. And that has to kind of go in balance, because we keep 30 hours, let's say, and then we do add 2 hours in the car, then you're going to be backlogged even more. Where if we do cut back the class a little, and like I said, here in Alamance, I can't speak for other people, but we have a very supportive board. Kids get 6 hours, students get 6 hours, but if we have to give them more, we just give them more. So, like I said, I think the application is more important than just memorizing signs and stuff like that, because they'll learn that on the road. Yet again, that's just my 2 senses.
Well, you happen to be absolutely right, and agree with the national standards. National standards recommends 8 to 10 hours of behind the wheel, and we understand that. How do we get there? That's what this committee will. I think that once we continue drilling down based on the data, and I'm looking at Natalie O'Brien again. The data and where that can lead us, where can we carve out more time to where we can accomplish those things? So we do appreciate your comments, and I do talk to Chad quite a bit over there in Alamance County. To move on just a little bit, we have Tanya Easterwood, who is the project manager on the DPI staff. I'd like to make a few comments.
Good morning. This is actually in reference to you, Chad, as it relates to the 17-week course and the time frame. One, sometimes when you share information, you also select it. So if you would like to share as it relates to a special committee to help, because we do get a lot of feedback from the class, so that we can actually implement a few of these things. But just to share a little bit of history, as Martin Rickman mentioned, it was a 3-year course. So what we've done in 17 and a half weeks, we had to build a pathway based on what would be acceptable here in licensure, so it would align. However, there may be some areas that can be modernized, that the content that's taking place in the course can actually take place in the car. However, if we do that, one of the biggest things for us to have this pathway created, that they do get that license, we cannot compromise the content or the teaching and the hours. So if you're open to having those conversations, we would love the feedback to see how can we revise that and bring that forward, because there's actually some additional content that needs to be added to the course. Delivery, we can because we are in the 21st century, virtual learning, face-to-face learning, there are additional options. And that's also the case with the student curriculum. However, this was the foundation that we were able to have. I love the option about lateral entry as well. Previously working in a school district in Wayne County, I think that is a great option. However, when you start talking about the lateral entry, we have to bring in licensure and the human resource departments, and that's also budget. So it's kind of bigger, but you are talking the language that we've discussed behind the scenes for a while. The foundation that we've set, we have the teachers in place, but now how do we begin moving it forward from just teaching to also having them have the license that align with pay? But pay is also a statewide issue at the moment as well with our limited budget. However, I do think that all of your comments are extremely valid. And I think that that's one of the things that we would like to incorporate in what we're currently doing here in driver education to move it forward. And if you have additional comments, will be if you have someone additional in your district that will be willing as a teacher to provide some of that feedback as well. The student side provides great feedback. Our instructional side, however, for the teachers, they do not share specifics, but we do look at those specifics. Your students do provide excellent feedback, and those things are incorporated like once a year during the summer, over the summer when we revise the curriculum and the content. So thank you.
Some of the comments that we received, especially during this time, has been that, thanks, Tanya, is that the students would like to be more involved with the program. I have this running survey that I've been doing when I travel out throughout the districts and throughout the state, is to ask students, have they taken driver ed yet? And it's like, and I don't tell them who I am, and I'll just say, what'd you think of it? And for the most part, they would say, well, it's boring, and it's like, we got to do this, and got to do this. And a lot of people and a lot of parents, students, administrators, they feel like this is a hoop that kids have to jump through to get to their license. This is a program that obviously Dr. I think his name was Whitney was it, that felt like that this was a very important program in regards to what we talked about today here at the Department of Public Instruction as the education of the whole child. This is a lifetime skill. This is a essential life skill of young adults, as far as what we've been finding in the surveys. So our goal here is how do we revamp this program, reform this program to where it's more effective with today's learner, using the skills and the data that we have. What should that look like? And I realize that some of people might be their last time at the table here, but this is kind of kickstarting what we're going to start off in August with the new pathways. So I look forward to continuing the conversation. So I've got on the screen here, we know the content. We've got content. We have a pathway through the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration. We've taken the ADCIA program that was as mentioned in the national standards as our basis for reconstructing a North Carolina curriculum. We got that, but what's the most important here is it content, is it delivery, or the processes? Now, I know the process, folks, we're talking about GDL and the alternative licensing process that we talked about back in February. How do we get the parents involved in this? How do we get the parents involved in this process? I don't know if we ever had a decision or where this committee felt or did we have a position on modification of the licensing process. What if students got their learner's permit when they enrolled in driver education? What does that do to GDL? I know that we did do. I think we left here with somewhat of a consensus that it was somewhat okay as long as but we're looking at licensing more children or teens earlier.
I think I think the benefit of it is to have distributed learning. because in any context, it's better to have it distributed along a long course of time with iterative experience. So with that in mind, it would be a good thing because while they're learning with an instructor, they could also be learning hands-on with a parent. I think what we talked about last time and have to consider is would making that change, if there's a change to GDL, would that lead to teens being on the road earlier? So that would just be, we'd have to keep that in mind in the structure of GDL, that we don't have teens licensed driving more at a younger age than they currently are. Because one way that GDL works is it reduces exposure, which reduces the amount of driving that young teens do. So that's one thing we would have to keep in mind. But I think overall the principle of being able to practice concurrently as they take up the course, and ideally not be the content of driver's ed not to be compacted within a, like it is sometimes with someone week time period, would be ideal.
I got
Hi, Don. Would that tie into what Chad was alluding to? I think if we did that, would that give more practice? I'm just thinking to my kid when my children went through the program, and I was relieved because I really didn't want to teach them how to drive. But one of the things that disappointed me, you know, what Chad was alluding to, if you did that as part of the program, my kids went through the program, but they didn't know who had the right of way. You could look at it on a diagram, but when we were driving, I constantly had to, you know, explain who has the right of way. Now, you know, talking about modernizing it in the Charlotte area, they're putting those rotaries, traffic circles everywhere. And the only way I learned how to drive through it when I lived in Boston is I got pulled over because I cut off a police officer and didn't know that he had the right of way. So bringing this back to what Chad was saying, what you're saying, and getting more parent involvement, if we could kind of combine all of that and get more parent participation if they got their learner's permit as they're going through the program. And maybe that would entice the parents or encourage the parents to know what they needed, you know, to follow the curriculum and helping their teen drive. I just,
Well, that's the thing, knowledge doesn't, in any, I mentioned this, in any subject, knowledge doesn't equal behavior change or expertise in, especially in a skill. So teaching someone, you know, sort of book smart doesn't mean that they can then go and apply it.
My concern about that decision, though, is I think it's a scary decision. And Carl, correct me if I'm wrong. I think Georgia does that. If I'm not mistaken. One of the states does it. And my concern with that is, and I can't speak for other counties because obviously North Carolina is a big state with 100 counties or whatnot. But I know, like sometimes when we're giving out our restricted instructional permit sheet and whatnot, I'll have kids' parents email me, hey, they can drive, right? Which is, even though it says right on it, no, this is not a permit, you cannot drive and so forth. My concern is this in regards to that, is that we sign off on their certificate. Like I said, we've offered students here at Alamance more hours and whatnot. I can't tell you, except for maybe one kid, how long I've been doing this, that I haven't had to use the brake. Or even my own daughter, because, you know, like I said, you know, every once in a while we'll let her just go up to the parking lot and so forth. Hopefully there's no police officers on this thing. Like one time I thought she was going to crash right into my house. I just think it's a liability. And yet again, obviously it's a 50-50 kind of thing, because there's some parents, they already allow their kids to drive and so forth. But my question is, or my concern is, because obviously everyone's saying my name, which means I think most people agree with me. My concern is like, limit the class a little more, add the driving, but if you will give them their permit relatively sooner, they're going to jump out there. And I will say, in doing this 19 years, the first year 1 to 12, kids are pretty good drivers and had common sense, I think. Now with this beautiful thing right here,
yeah.
And they're not driving obviously on the phone, but I've asked kids, why would you turn left on a yellow light? Do you watch your parents drive? Not really. I'm just usually on my phone. So, I think the amount of kids who start, like day one used to be a pretty decent day for me. Day one usually is a pretty rough day for most kids nowadays. So I just worry about the liability. I'm just playing both sides. I understand. Like I would actually probably like for my daughter to get her permit a little earlier, so then I can drive with her. But I also know that, she's a pretty, lucky kid to have two parents that are willing to do that, where a lot of our kids here in Alamance County, in the low socioeconomic county, I don't know if they're gonna do that. They're gonna see their kids get their permit and say, all right, Johnny, go ahead. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've had kids drive themselves to driver's ed before. I mean, it's crazy, so.
Okay, so good, this good stuff. I want to interject a couple more things into this. 2 weeks ago, I received an email from the Department of Commerce, and something that we don't think about is that their students under 18 who are needing to work. And the question was from Department of Commerce was, can there be additional classes or more classes available for 17 and 18-year-olds? Because that was one of the major issues keeping students from going back to work or going to work. The other piece of this is that we'll add back into the ingredients, and you can see how this program is starting to grow now and how it impacts our economy, is equity. We know through UNC Highway Research Center, who shared with us some statistics a few years ago that showed where 80% of students of color got their license after age 18, where they most likely did not have any training at all. Whereas now we know that the crash rates among 18, 19, 20-year-olds is, help me out there.
It's higher.
It's higher. Simply because.
Well, we don't know.
Right.
It's complicated.
Right, it is complicated.
Yeah, I mean, crash rates are higher in general in those age groups because they drive more, but also, we don't know the full picture, but there are students with Hispanic and Black individuals in North Carolina specifically are getting licensed at higher ages, past 18.
Right.
But also that's a shift among sort of everyone. It's really expensive to drive, not just take driver's ed, but it's expensive to own a car, have insurance, and have people available to provide the practice. So it's shifting just this higher SES in general of individuals who are getting licensed as a young person.
And I'm going to make a statement, and you tell me, because I don't think there's any data on this either. There are some mindsets that think that because the kids are waiting later in life, 20, to get their license, they've had more opportunity to practice. And I don't believe that's accurate. And I mean, you know as well as I do, people come up with all kinds of ideology, and they say it with such emphasis that it sounds like fact. And I would also, in agreement with all of these comments. I mean, everybody has got some really good concrete things that you are saying that really impact what is happening with our statistics. And I always leave the stats to the professionals. But being out there and understanding and working with the Highway Patrol and other local law enforcement, we see kids every day out on the road, and they are doing things that they learned from their parents. And yes, it's great to get the parents involved, but even when I did my dissertation, talking to the parents, they were literally, and we looked from every part of income status and race and everything, economic, everything. And yet they still had the mindset was it's the school's responsibility or whoever is training the student. And I'll do the best I can, but do I really have a real big role because they have to go to DMV and get their license? And then it's almost like, do you honestly believe DMV's in charge of making them a good driver? And a lot of the response was, well, aren't they? Because law enforcement's out there, and it's almost like it's someone else's responsibility. It's the school's responsibility because y'all are teaching them how to drive, right? And then it's the law enforcement, because if my kid is not doing the right thing and driving and he runs a yellow light to beat the red light, or does a Hollywood stop, then it's the law enforcement's responsibility to write him a ticket. Because if he gets a ticket, then he's going to know better. We've all sit here and think of the most impactful thing that happened to us in driving. I hit a deer when I'm 17. I don't forget that. I run a red light and hit and crash into other cars. I don't forget that. But we don't want our kids to have those experiences. But I do agree that we need more practice out there and adult involvement. We are in a couple of counties right now that are highest crash rates. And then in fact, they're high in everything. And when we say something as simple as we're going to do a seatbelt campaign, we get responses from individuals my age that, well, my father didn't wear a seatbelt, and my grandfather didn't wear a seatbelt, and my grandfather's 92 years old, he's still living. So that equates with, I don't wear a seatbelt, I'm okay. And trying to get into these counties, a couple of them, to change culture, to change that decision-making process has been difficult. And we are changing human behavior, whatever that means. But I would say, just because I've said a lot, probably too much, but I would say that if we do expand, we know that GDL program has worked, and it's worked well for 25 years. Maybe there are some things that we can massage and do something to add on to it. But I feel like I'm representing Dr. Foss right now. I think, because I think he was one of the founders of this program and very animate. This program works. I mean, it works in North Carolina. And for us to deviate from that or reduce the requirements of that would be detrimental to our students, because right now the teens driving out there are crashing and are causing more incidents than what we were doing way back when. I mean, and that's us. We're all having a problem with driving because of a majority of this, and I'm not an advocate of this, although it's my right hand and it's all of our right hand. So, you know, there's a lot of things we need to do differently, clearly. We can't decide here. But I guess my question to you is, if you had no problem with money, no problem with stats, no problem with anybody in agreeing unanimously, how would you want to see the program? What would you want, ideally?
The model program?
The model program.
I am glad you asked that question.
And you've not even paid me to ask that.
The model program, based on the national standards and based on being a part of these national organizations and going to state administrator symposiums, and understanding or being aware of other countries' training programs, I would recommend this, is that the program be expanded beyond where we are now. I know this is not going to sit well with folks, but I feel like that the program has changed for administration and not for education. I'd like to put the student back in the beginning, or back at the forefront. In my opinion, the program should last for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever it may be. Students are getting a little bit of classwork, a little bit of driving with the teacher, a little bit of driving with the parent, and then I guess you would call that not really segmented learning, but concurrent learning, where they learning certain concepts in the classroom, practicing those with the teacher, and then the teacher giving that information to the parent for them to practice. Because like you just said, a lot of people think that once the students finish our 36-hour program, that the students should be able to drive a vehicle. And there's no one in the educational side will say that we've taught a student how to drive in 36 hours. There are certain instances where students can't even get out of the parking lot in 6 hours of driving.
That's true.
We've got teachers who are asking to drive 4 hours in a single day because of the way their contracts are set up. Their contracts are set up because they get paid based on the students. How did we ever get there? It's not the district's fault that it has evolved into that. So what does it look like? And I think that when we look back on this in 25 years, and when I'll be driving a motorized wheelchair probably, is that we will find out that we're in the transition period of, there was a lot of reformation, a lot of things that are going on, and they finally started following data. I feel like that we have gotten to this point because we evolved basically without following the data, the information that we had available to us. All of the agencies that are involved here did not help to, or let's say this, they weren't allowed to provide their leadership or their expertise into this. What does this look like? Like I said, we have one highway system, and we've got, in this state, we've got 115 different ways of doing that. And then we got, Cindy, were we closing in on 1,250 teachers? So we got 1,250 curriculums, and none of them end up with what is being measured at the license office. Or it's what they think, because we know this for educators, once they get out into their own classrooms, if they're not getting professional development in this area, which is not required except through DMV, is where it's required to get CEUs or professional development in traffic safety, but not in the public schools. See, there's another issue. I was just talking about this with the deputy superintendent the other day. Not a requirement to have any CEUs in traffic safety education. So what is it? What amount is required for a teacher to know? And to me, a teacher in a classroom, they have a set idea of what they want to teach in the classroom. But if the students take him in a different direction, they feel comfortable. I don't mean to say him, them. They take them in a good direction, and they massage their curriculum based on what is requested by the class. One of the things that I heard from the student, and I was going to tell you this a few minutes ago, is the student said in a meeting like this, said they wanted to be more involved with the educational process. And what's wrong with that? We have teachers and observers who feel like that when teachers are in the classroom, if they're not doing all the talking, like I feel like I am sometimes, then they're not teaching. Maybe because so you, to get back to the piece that you were talking about, behavior, can we, and I hope Tracy is still on the line, because every time I think about behavior, I think of Tracy Russ now, right? Tracy, is Tracy still there?
I'm still here.
Tracy, it just burns into my mind here that when I saw the video that you've got where when we say that we want to our target is 0 fatalities. Most people don't feel like that's possible, and they give all kinds of excuses. You remember that? You know that video I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think it was the intro to NC Vision Zero back in 2016, probably.
Yes, it had a lasting effect on me. I'll say that.
That's great. I'll put the link in the chat for everyone to reference.
But can we, as far as content and delivery, can we affect behavior?
I think AI would be a great tool to add to the technology so that scenario, we live in a digital world and play gaming. Some of the scenarios I feel would be great is if you pass a stop sign, what does that look like? Not just the words, but what that impact, because that image will say 1,000 words versus the ones that we type. So to add to what Mr. Loving has said, if we didn't have a money issue, I think AI and video captioning inside of the digital course to assist with what's going on inside of the car classroom portion, I think that would help, because some of the decision making, and then the added component of laying that foundation of the online learning and being able to incorporate those two, which would be some of the parental component on it because it's online. I think those are some of the critical areas that we would like to move into, and those are some of the early discussions that we've had. Prices on AI have reduced somewhat, but not a lot. And so having UNC on our team and being able to kind of figure out what that looks like, what are the pros and cons of that, and not just from our area, because everything that we've worked on, we collaborate with digital teaching and learning into BPS, UNC. So we will still follow that. But I think seeing some of that inside of the class when they're online and then they're inside of the classroom, the mobile classroom with the car. I think those are critical components as it relates to kind of moving things forward with driver education also, in addition to what Mr. Lewis.
So now, Natalie, go ahead, Natalie.
This line, there is a lot of research in the driver community into hazard anticipation training, which is really what you're talking. And there are already available online modules that are free for students to do that have had some positive effects. And that's the thing, though. It's looking what is the outcome that we're looking for? Is the final outcome? I think what we all want is to reduce crashes. That's the far-reaching one. And I don't think that the training is there yet. It's getting close, but it's also hard to demonstrate that. And it's when is it offered along the lines of the licensing process? But there are advances being made along that way. And I'm actually, there's so many questions right in my mind. I'm actually working on a project for NHTSA right now. It's the state of knowledge on novice drivers to look at 20 years worth of research, nationally and internationally along various domains. And one is driver education, to try to come up with where we've been and where do we really need to go. And a lot of this is very relevant to what I'm working on. But I think the biggest question with driver's education, before you figure any direction, is what is the intent? What do we hope to achieve? Is it that they acknowledge that they can pass the test to then and they're prepared to practice a parent? Is that we think that they're going to have this education and training that's going to lead to crashes a year and a half from then? So we have to know what the objectives are to be able to then to plan for that.
Which is
Sorry.
why I wanted to have this conversation. Thank you for that. I didn't say it, but you did.
Can I bring some points? Carl, you tell me what to do.
Someone chimed in and we lost them.
No, I was gonna say I didn't want to cut you off. Couple things I'm hearing about here. So yet again, I can't speak for other counties, but the biggest problem I'm seeing is, and please, if you have it in the chat or whatnot, a lot of the teachers, I have plenty of people who want to drive. I just know a lot of people who want to teach a class. Because a lot of our teachers, as you know, who are leaving the profession, especially are burned out during the day, they're graded and they're doing this. I've asked a couple of beginning teachers, they're overwhelmed, and so forth. So, like I said, if we keep talking about this, and I'm fine with talking about stuff, but as I put in the chat, if we do certain changes, are we going to be able to get an increase in budget? Are we going to be able to get the teachers we need? But one thing I wanted to pinpoint, that's because we always talk about equity and equality in driver's ed. The biggest concern that I have is the whole eye vision thing. And most of our kids who are predominantly middle class, upper social economics and whatnot, their parents during COVID or whatnot, even after COVID, would get them glasses and so forth. But a lot of my students who fail in the eye exam, they finally get their glasses. Now they're being told, hey, you can't go to the DMV anymore. And like I said, the DMV is underfunded, yada, yada, yada. There's a bunch of stuff. Is there a way for us instructors to be trained by the DMV? And I can't speak for everyone. I want everyone to get mad at me. But I don't mind doing eye checks of my students. Is that something that's a possibility?
Paul, are you still on?
I'm still on. And I hate that everybody keeps calling it eye checks, because if you take a look at the RIP, it talks about medical, it talks about any type of addictions and stuff like that. So there's more to it than just checking to make sure that they have 20/40 vision. Could you be trained for it? I think you could. We train examiners how to do the vision check. We train my DEPSs how to look for any physical problems and review the document to make sure that it is done correctly, and whether or not we need to send it to DMV medical for a medical to be started. The reason we do that, because with the medical program, and there may be people on here that could back me up on this, once you get into the DMV medical program, it's extremely challenging to get out of, and it can be very cost prohibitive, I guess you would say. I do know of people that have lost their licenses and not been able to get it back due to the fact that they haven't been able to keep up with all the demands of the medical program and the doctors that the person would have to see. So that's my 2 cents on it. It's a possibility. Do I see it happening in the near future? You guys all know how quickly legislature changes on those things.
And just to add to that, Paul, I think you brought up some good points, and it was a great question. But that kind of lends to some of the confusion and conflict with doing these medical checks at the DMV. And it was brought to our attention most recently that this entails more than just a vision check, as Paul outlined. And so we had to take a look at it with our examiners, because when you do a medical assessment on a student and enter them into a program or a review, is completely different from a normal DMV service. And so that's why Paul and I had to come together and kind of relook this and reiterate the process of the restricted instruction program.
Thanks, Mike. Paul, and I'm well aware of those because I've been working with them for years. I used to work for DMV, and I'm well aware of those. Chad, one of the things that you brought up there was critical, being that as I guess in defense of you and your position, you are new in that position. And thank you for the question, because what you're saying is absolutely true. If you don't know this, then you don't know it. But communication is critical, that we all are dancing on the same sheet of music, because we've got one highway system. What are we passing on from DPI, DMV, all the way down to the districts, all the way down to the teachers? It gets out, and the information that goes out to the parents and students. The thing that I have not mentioned here is, kind of segue into the next piece of it, is what I've not mentioned here is that DPI, the state driver education program, is responsible for teaching all enrolled students in North Carolina. That's public, charter, private, home, federal school students, all of them. And the same. So when I think of equity, I don't think of just racial equity. I'm thinking of socioeconomic. I'm thinking of all the different schools that we support. And when you look at that, I've got, is it 400 high schools in North Carolina? I'm looking for you for help. I guess Kevin would know that. But I know we're just now over 200 charter schools in North Carolina, right, Mr.
204. Yes.
And then we got
55 high schools.
And then we don't know how many homeschoolers we have in North Carolina. And then we also have over 700 private schools in North Carolina. We're responsible for teaching all of them the same information. And so the local coordinator where you are, Chad, it's very critical that you have all the up-to-date correct information so that you can disseminate that information to your students and parents. So communication is a huge piece. It's probably my biggest frustration here at DPI, is not being able to communicate with the district leaders and the teachers, and then so on. Obviously, and what we don't communicate effectively to the students, parents at the local level, then the driver license office inherits those downstream. And then the police officer inherits that issue out on the road. Okay, so and that's what we're trying to locate, or trying to effectively trying to figure out the direction that we go with this committee. And I love the question, what is it? Because I talked to our state board attorney, and the expectations are that the student passes the written test at the license office. That's what it is. And why is that? Because when the program went out of the school curriculum, that's what we were left with. And up until 2015, in fact, it still says it on our strategic plan that the one of the performance indicators is the percentage of students who pass the written test at the license office. And Mike Newsom and I have talked about this many times, that the test at the license office doesn't necessarily test what we are teaching in driver education. And so we know that, and we're working in that direction to figure out how to do that, to alleviate that issue. But then still, what is it? what are the expectations? And I hope that Tracy, I didn't mean to cut you off a minute ago, but behavior, can we impact behavior in a classroom setting or behind the wheel setting?
Well, yeah. So I think the biggest thing is just that when we provide information, there's ways to do that more effectively. So there are strategies for behavior change that could be implemented for driver's ed. So the basis of this is that just giving someone a fact doesn't mean they're going to go implement that fact. So we can give, teen drivers statistics about what causes the most crashes, but that doesn't really ensure that they're going to go out and be as safe as possible. So I just think the basis of this is with the curriculum, if you're looking to improve the curriculum, you can just implement some of those behavior change strategies for communication, for programs, for all the content.
So the idea, and if you're asking me the question of what should a teacher be capable of, is that they have a curriculum, they have curriculum content that they're going to share with the students. I think that, in my opinion, a lot of time is being spent by the teacher in a traditional setting of covering items such as that the student most likely already knows. But how does that fit? Does the student have an opportunity to express themselves using the terms that we are providing them and the information that we're providing them? I'm thinking that's how we have this, once the students have buy-in into what we're teaching safety, I'm thinking that they're more likely to follow that as opposed to someone standing behind a podium and reading from a book. I think there's many, many ways of disseminating information. And that I think the more that the teacher is not involved in disseminating information, the better it is. The teacher is responsible for what's being taught, but they don't have to be the one that's saying it. So so to me that impacts buy-in from the student, which gets back to the students that I heard that day. She said she wanted to be involved in the teaching process. What's the matter with us helping to create skits and role playing and things like that into the classroom? And my thoughts would be that would be great for me because I get to come in the classroom and give out assignments and then watch them teach it. Because eventually, just like this, when I saw last year where the General Assembly, I don't know if this bill passed, the zipper lanes. Did it pass? Where we have 2 lanes on the interstate, and then you're merging into one. Why do you have to have a law that says you've got to alternate merge? Shouldn't that be common sense? But we have adults that won't do that. And that's a behavioral issue. Well, you saw the sign 1,500 feet back there, you should have gotten over it. So what is that? So I know that, so these are all great ideas, great information. And I really just wanted to kind of whet the appetite of this committee as we move forward and let you kind of in our DPI circle, because we've been in this conversation now for 5 years. And I'm looking forward to the leadership that we're going to have in the new committee that comes on, and looking forward to being able to recycle folks to keep them at the table. And even though, Chad, I know that it seemed like that I didn't like any of your ideas, I thought they were great. And from your standpoint, they do make a lot of sense. But as far as the administration of the program, the curriculum content that we have, the delivery methods that we use, I think that, and then the major question is, how do we change the concept of passing the DMV test as the requirement? Because part of my resume is one time I was a license examiner, And then many times I've seen people leave the license office and pull out on the road into a collision. They passed the test. And in my opinion, if they're the ones given, they passed the written test, they passed the road test, and they pull out and they have a collision.
You have a lot of kids who have IEPs and 504s and
Oh.
they'll never pass that test. Just like Chad was talking about, you have kids who are valedictorians that do great in the classroom, they can't drive a lick. You have a kid who can't read, awesome driver, but can't pass the test because he can't read. And the public schools, in my opinion, which I'm 29 years, the public schools accommodate and help them pass and help them pass. And I think that the EMV is the real world. Either you know it or you don't know it. But in the public school, we're there to help them, move them on, give them something. But we'll lower it a little bit so they'll pass.
So now,
EMV is not like that.
So should DMV be the one who has to make that decision?
I know this. If we can't, I mean, just like this, they complete 30 hours in the classroom, 6 hours behind the wheel. It's not a pass or fail, it's a complete. If we fail, then we don't get paid. I want to get paid, and everybody else wants to get paid. Now, if we, I don't know if every school system is like that. If you fail them, you still get paid and put them back through the program. We can't. Now, all we want to do is see growth. And like you were talking about earlier, you can have a kid I can have a kid that drives. First day, 2 wheels on the road, 2 wheels off the road. The second day, half the time, 2 wheels on the road, 2 wheels off the day. The last day, hey man, we were on the road. That's improvement. Yeah. Are they ready to get on the road? No. But they've done a lot of improvement. And then earlier, and I'll be quiet, but earlier you were talking about 17, 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds did driver's ed. Well, that's their choice. It's not required that they take it. It was their choice. You know, and every kid, I know every kid where I work, Wayne County, they have the opportunity. We offer so many classes, weekdays, weekends, to get them in the class. And if they choose not to take it, they don't. And most of the time, a 17-year-old kid that happened to have driver's ed, it was because they were scared. Right. And they didn't want to take it until, oh my God, I have to take it now. And then at that point, it becomes, they're too late. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, so 2 points that you made were great, and then I guess we'll start to wind this up. Is that 2 points? The requirement of finishing a student before you get paid, that's not in policy anywhere. That's something that it's your district that has done that. So that's a standardization issue that I feel like that we at DPI should be giving the information to the districts to let them know or give them an idea of what the scope of that contract should look like, because it shouldn't be that way. But
I'll tell you this too, you have a lot of kids in public schools. We give them a copy of a test. They're not held accountable and they won't pass it. I mean, you have kids who can't pass the written part. If you really put it down, we've had half our kids not pass driver's ed, but they can drive now. They can drive great, but they can't pass the written part.
So my opportunity to spend some time with an attorney is who said that the test has to be written? Now, I'm going to draw one last person into this conversation. You mentioned exceptional children, Carol and Hudgens. I used to dazzle with some of the people when I would go out to and teach defensive driving, and I would ask sometimes, can you get a license with, and when I would start taking away body parts, one-eyed person, legally blind, one leg, one arm missing, things like that. And most people would say, oh no, you can't drive unless you have 2 legs, and the answer is that's incorrect. And that now we get back to the teacher training part, that teachers, when Martin went through this course, were given instruction on how to teach students with and recognize students with learning disabilities. That's why. And actually, we've cut that piece out of our program in order to make it as only 17 weeks. But I know that Carol, being exceptional children, I know that you
I'm gonna pearl or something here. So I think that
the thing to keep in mind is what's considered a reasonable accommodation. It's not modifying or lessening what the child is expected to know, but can the student demonstrate his or her learning with a reasonable accommodation? If I'm not mistaken, a read aloud is a reasonable accommodation that can be offered at the DMV. So if a student can demonstrate their learning by having the test read to them, then the DMV will let them pass the test if they can answer the questions. So I think the thing when you have to think about when thinking of students with disabilities is that reasonableness. Because in my opinion, the DMV makes the decision if they're going to issue the license or not. And so we provide the instruction a whole lot of different ways to help our students learn, but they have to demonstrate their learning if they're going to be given a license to drive.
Thanks, Carol. And as you could tell, I could go on and on and on with this, but I just welcomed you into our world here at DPI. These are all the things that we're having to consider, and I look forward to your leadership and guidance as we continue moving the program forward. As you can tell, this is a very, very that's the word I'm looking for. I don't want to say dynamic, but it's a very fluid program. Very fluid, very fluid. And what should it look like today? And as I said, being part of a national consortium of state leaders, I will tell you this, that we're most of the time head and shoulders above other states when it comes to traffic safety education, which is kind of alarming because I can drive into South Carolina and Georgia and Tennessee, and it's like, knowing that it was not required or a limited amount of education was required. So it's going to be interesting moving forward. Thank you for the opportunity for letting me do this. Mr. Tan, Mr. Chair, as I said before, I hope that on June the 1st, we'll find out that we can recycle you folks who were that second list there and continue moving this conversation forward. And as you can tell, we can't do this in a quarterly meeting environment. So we will be employing subcommittees again to discuss some of these things so we can draw in local leaders and to get their input on where we end up. Thank you for the opportunity, Devin.
Thank you, Carl. Appreciate it. And thank you all for those of you that participated and those at the table for as someone that's over an education program here in Wake County, the driver education program, I'm always trying to keep my finger on the pulse of the types of training that our teachers need to be receiving and how are our children learning and are we being the most effective that we can be as instructors. I think it was Craig, you talked about how or maybe it was Carl, we can get up there for 3 hours a day and talk, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the kids are retaining, much less their behavior is changing. I've always felt that master teachers are master facilitators. And that's something that I feel like getting our kids involved in the classroom setting is the best way for them to learn from not just from the teacher, but from each other and from their experiences. And quite frankly, having discussions about what they've already learned, good or bad, from their parents, because since they've been front forward facing in the back seat, they've been learning how to drive from their parents' behaviors. So, they're interesting conversations to have with kids. Scary conversations sometimes, but interesting nonetheless. So, I appreciate everyone's participation. At this time, I would just want to thank you all, committee members, advisors, and staff, for your preparation and for the discussions and for getting here. I know some of you come some distance to be here and take time out of your workday to participate in this, whether you're online or not. So I do appreciate you guys coming. I want to remind committee members that our next monthly meeting is going to be held in this room on August 9th, 2022. We will be having an annual orientation. We do that once a year, and that will be not a public meeting. It will be a closed door meeting for for the advisory committee, and then that'll start at 10, go to 10:45, and then after that at 11, we'll start the DEAC quarterly meeting. Now, I know we were shown a schedule of Carl's summer workshops, which fall on August the 9th. Are you?
No, we're working around that. We actually moved the advisory committee meeting from the third Tuesday because it was in the middle of the North Carolina Traffic Safety Conference and Expo.
Gotcha.
So we moved it away from there because a few of us would be heavily involved, especially Dr. Leonard over there. So she would not be here. And then also, I guess I was told something that night.
Right. So we are planning on having the meeting.
So the meeting will be on
Okay.
on that Tuesday before the 9th.
Perfect.
In this room, and then we will be in the eastern part of the state as we're continuing barnstorming down the state.
Okay, perfect.
We're waiting.
Locations to be announced later?
Yes, Cindy will be sending those out, but they will typically be in the general areas of, from looking west would be Haywood County, the Catawba area, Caldwell County area, Charlotte area, Greensboro, Wake, Cumberland, and the New Hanover and Martin County. Those general areas. It may fluctuate one of those counties, but typically those are the ones we normally go to.
All right, thank you, Carl. I'd like to go ahead and entertain a motion to from the floor to adjourn the meeting.
Hang on said yes.
Yes.
Okay, hang on. And then a second. Oh, we don't need one. Okay. Okay. So thank you very much. We'll see you guys in August, and this meeting is adjourned. Thanks for coming. Didn't get to a test.